Hi, I'm Marcel. I've got a 2016 WRX. I'm not that impressed by the speakers and the sound system, particularly with the tweeters that are in the dash. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the tweeters in the dash with an aftermarket model. This is going to sound a whole lot better. As far as the speakers go, I think replacing the tweeters is probably the biggest improvement that you can make. Also check out my other video on how to replace the speakers that are in the doors. This also ought to work on the 2015 model, as they're basically the same from year to year. This also may work on next year's model. Let's show you how it works.
Okay, so let's start by taking out the tweeter and the dash right there. I'm going to move up through the window here to get a better view. So this whole piece right here just slips right out, and what I'm going to do is get a pry tool like this one here. It's got a really nice thin edge on it. You could potentially use a flathead screwdriver, but it might end up damaging it. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to catch this edge right on the left, and if I get this right, I can just get it just to pry right up like that. Now I can just go ahead and back out, and then I've got it. Just pull it straight up, pivoting around the back front, and then pull out. And now I've got my tweeter exposed. So on the tweeter, so we've got two screws. Just have to focus in here a minute. And we're going to get a nice little stubby screwdriver to take those screws out. Okay, so here's a nice little screwdriver that'll fit up in this window space right there. Now we'll use this to take the two screws out. Screws out, I can go ahead and lift straight up on the factory tweeter, and out it comes. And on the bottom it's got this white two pieces of plastic snapped together, which gives us our factory wiring harness right there, which I'll slip out in just a moment. And it also gives us, I believe this is probably a crossover or a high pass filter right there, which we're going to reuse. So what we want to do now is to go ahead and snap it out of the factory harness and take it off. So there's a little tab right here that you push down on as you pull out, which I already pushed down on and pulled out a little bit, so now this comes out like that. So there's our factory harness. This is different than it is in the doors, unfortunately, and this is a combination of the factory tweeter with the factory harness and the crossover installed. So now we're going to disassemble the factory tweeter and reuse this crossover and the harness. Now I've got the factory tweeter all the way out. So what we want to do basically, there's just two pieces of white plastic here. There's one here, and you see the second one from up that has the factory harness. We want to take that off from the factory tweeter and reuse it on our new tweeter. It may not be really visible to see, but with this top one snaps on, so you can see a snap point here, 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 and here, and there's some glue that we've got in there as well. So what we're going to want to do is to basically unsnap this from this point right here, carefully prying it up, careful not to break the snaps, and separate the top plastic from the bottom plastic. And what I've discovered is that this bottom plastic, between these two pieces there's a screw that goes in the center of the tweeter. It's holding it on. So once we can take this first top part off from the bottom part, then we can expose the screw, take the screw out, and then we'll have both pieces of plastic off. So part of the challenge here is that the top piece and the bottom piece are not only held together by snaps, but there's also some glue in between them. So we're going to have to give some greater force than usual to pull this apart, because this glue, it's actually some of this black stuff right here. It kind of looks like a rubber cement, but it's pretty strong stuff. So I'm going to pry in between here, careful to kind of get past the snaps and work my way in to get into this area with just a flathead screwdriver. I can very carefully start to pry it, and now the glue's starting to give way. Got that first snap gone. Let's keep working our way around here. You can start to see some of that black glue that's in the middle there. Let's continue to work around. Careful not to break the snaps. We're going to want those back. There's some of that nasty glue. That's strong stuff. Break that. Okay. So now we've exposed the screw right here. So let me go get a Phillips screwdriver. We'll take that screw out and see if we can get this bottom piece of the plastic off. Alright, so let's go ahead and take the screw out. And this is screwing right into the back of the tweeter. You'll find a similar hole, at least on the kicker tweeters that I've got, the nice aftermarket ones. We're not going to need that screw anymore, so we can just discard that. Not a problem. Alright, now we want to get, in theory this should come right off if it wasn't glued some more, but there's an extra layer of glue between the tweeter and this extra piece of plastic, so we're going to want to pry up in here, see if we can get this next layer of glue off. And there we are. So now we've got both pieces of plastic separated out. So this is now, if we want to reuse basically the wiring, these two pieces of plastic, this is soldered on to the factory tweeter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some wire cutters and just cut this wire as close as I can to the solder joints here. And that way I got the most wire to use as possible. And whoop, dropped the wrong one. So this is one we can throw away now. We're not going to want that anymore. That's what we're upgrading. And now we've got this, and this is what we want to be able to keep. So let's start working on attaching this to our aftermarket tweeters. And what we want to do is basically come up with a custom mounting bracket that uses these two holes to go into the dash, so we can reuse those as holes. I like to avoid drilling new holes in the dash. One way to do that is to start with a metal strap like this. This is just something you can get down at the local hardware store. So this is a small piece, and what I like to do is to do something like put it into this. So if we get this working, that gives us our foundation that we can attach a tweeter to, so we can get this mounted. And then if we look at getting these holes lined up, if I've done this properly, you see these holes right here and right here will line up, so I can just drop this new contraption in the dash and it will use the same holes that I've got in my factory tweeter. And I've got my metal bent here. This is obviously too long, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut it off right here. Again, I want to line up these two holes, make sure that they look good. Those look actually quite good right there. So I'm going to want to cut it off right here at this line because we don't want to run that long. So I'm going to get this hacksaw. I'm just going to cut right along that line right there. And if you want to polish it up, you can get a file or a grinder or something like that and just take out those little sharp edges that are left behind when you saw it, so you don't cut yourself or scrape up your dash as you're moving this in and out. So here's my aftermarket tweeter secure. I'm going to take advantage of this screw or this nut right in the back. I went through the box the tweeter came in. It did not include this screw to go into here, which is a bit of a nuisance. So I went through my hardware in the garage here trying to find one that fit. Cannot find one that fit. Eventually went up to the hardware store, taking the tweeter with me so I could find one that did fit, and found this. This is a metric bolt, which is why I couldn't find one in my garage. So this is a 4mm bolt in diameter. The length of it, or the height of it, is about 12mm. So because this bolt can only go in so far, and then you hit basically the backside of the tweeter, you don't want to get it screwed in too far. So we want to make sure that this is neither too short nor too long. So what I'm going to do is start off with a piece of plastic that I got off my factory system. I got a small little lock nut washer in there just to help space it out to the right distance, which I've had to just trial and error. And I'm going to go ahead and drop the nut in here. And then I'm going to get a little bit more space on here, so I'm going to drop in another lock nut washer and a standard washer. And then what I want to be able to do is to have the tweeter come in like this, and I take my hole and line it up there. There's two options, two holes I've got. It doesn't really matter, there's plenty of room in the recess in the grill. So now I'm going to line this up and get my screwdriver, and if all goes well, it should connect in. And get my wires off to both sides here. It seems to fit the best. And these two little notches off the factory plastic, those are good to have those on one side. Just because it's tighten up, don't put it in again too far, too hard. You'll feel it stop. Don't push beyond that because you don't want to poke a hole in the back of the tweeter. And now we've got our basic mounting bracket for that. So it's going to look very similar to what we've had from the factory. And let me go ahead and get the wires in the end here stripped out so we can prep them to connect it to the new tweeters. And I go back to the bracket that I built earlier and the part that I just cut off. And what I want to do is find these two notches in the plastic, one right there and one right there. Get those off to one side. And here's these two wires right here. I'm going to line these wires up with the notches, and at the same time I should be able to snap this back in. You see it's got these snaps right along here which come into the edges around this part here. So I'm going to get these two wires put into the notches and line it up. Make sure I've got my screw as tight as I want to because this is a good buy point, and snap that together like that. Now I've got my factory harness. I've got it in the mounting bracket. Now I just need to get these wires connected. So now I've got it all assembled. I went ahead and cut the extra length of wires we had from the kicker tweeters. Stripped them off similarly, used a twist-on tie to get them coupled up, gave them a nice good tug and twist it up tight. So let's go do a final fit before we screw it in and plug it in and see if it works. Now I've got my factory tweeter. I put it back on the wiring harness, going back in here. I'm just going to drop this in. And then get the holes lined up. And then take the two screws, which we were careful not to lose, and go ahead and put those in. Just hand tighten to get started. And then get the other one in too.